Did the Steam Deck just get its biggest competitor? How's it going, guys, and welcome to Deck Ready, the channel all about the Steam Deck. This is the weekly news roundup for Steam Deck news. I usually pick 3 or 4 stories from around the internet that I think are interesting, and this week we've got some pretty cool stuff related to the device. But before I jump into it, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by me. That's right, I have a link down in the description for pretty much every single Steam Deck accessory I use every day, and they are affiliate links, so if you buy them through the links I have down there, I get a little bit of money back, which will help my never-ending addiction to buying Steam games. So the first story I wanted to jump into this week is that Windows drivers for audio are finally here on the Steam Deck. If you're one of these people who just got their Steam Deck, you're coming over to YouTube while you wait for it to ship to you, and you're excited to know more about it, yes, you can install Windows on your Steam Deck. It's a little bit finicky, and unless you have extreme knowledge of partitioning a Linux drive and making a bootloader, then yeah, you're probably gonna have to wipe your entire Steam Deck to install Windows, unless you use a method that I was able to figure out to install it to a micro SD card, in which case it is working extremely well. The biggest problem with doing that though so far was that the only way to get sound was to use Bluetooth because there were no audio drivers. Basically every other driver was there, just not the audio one and the driver that allows you to dual boot. So now we only have one more driver to wait for. So knowing that the speakers and the headphone jack are going to work on the Steam Deck with Windows, that basically makes it viable for me as a Windows machine. Of course, I still don't have my Steam Deck. It's still being RMA'd, and I was like, dang, it's taking a little while. It's Thursday, May 19th, by the way, and I shipped it out like a week prior to last Sunday, so 2 Sundays ago. So it's taking a little while, but right when I was about to get frustrated, I got the email that mine shipped out and I'll have it back next Wednesday. So the first thing I'm going to do is update the Windows on my little SD card. So this time it's not as simple as just installing the audio driver and being ready to go. First, you're gonna have to head over to the drivers page for Windows that Steam has. I'll link it down in the description. And the first thing you're also going to have to download is a new APU driver. They say this driver is updated as of May 13th, 2022. You will need this updated version for audio support. If you already have the old driver, make sure to tick the factory reset checkbox in the installer. And then after that, you can head down to the audio driver section, but this time it should be a lot easier because if you've already installed Windows, you have the internet driver set up and you won't have to put all this stuff on a flash drive to install on your Steam Deck. But anyways, head down to that audio driver section and it says download driver 1 of 2, right click CS35L41.inf and select install, and then download audio driver 2 of 2, right click NAU88L21.inf and select install. These INF files will show up as setup information type files in the file explorer. On Windows 11, right click and select show more options to see the install option. And then the saddest part of this page is that right under that it says dual boot with SteamOS not yet available. Installing Windows requires you to wipe your Steam Deck, and dual boot with SteamOS is not currently available. While Steam Deck is fully capable of dual boot, the SteamOS installer that provides a dual boot wizard isn't ready yet. This will ship alongside SteamOS 3 once it's complete. Now that's a little bit of a bummer because SteamOS is available on a consumer device like that you can buy right now, the Steam Deck, and when they update it, they don't do like 3.0 dot numbers, they do 3.1 or 3.2. So they're clearly like considering that first build, the shippable 3.0 version of SteamOS. So hopefully we don't have too much longer to wait until we get this dual boot support, because I feel like that's what makes this the perfect device for everyone. We are getting more support for online games, like even obscure stuff like Blood Hunt. That game shipped with the right easy anti-cheat. I know people are already working on V Rising to try and get that one to work. So yeah, I think the support has been pretty good, but there are still some very big games that do not work, like Destiny 2 and Dead by Daylight. Now for me personally, Dead by Daylight is a lot less important to me now that Evil Dead the game is out. I was basically playing Dead by Daylight because it was the only real option, with Friday the 13th being all but dead and Evil Dead not being out yet. But now that Evil Dead is out and it's one of the best games I've played this year, it is so much fun. That's kind of like my default horror multiplayer game at this point. But Destiny 2 is the game I play every day, and I know how many people play Dead by Daylight, so hopefully they figure that one out sooner rather than later. Either way, having the audio driver brings us one step closer to dual boot support, which at that point it won't really matter that these games don't work on SteamOS just yet, and then when they do, you can move over there and enjoy them as they were intended. Next up, we knew this video was coming, but I don't think I was ready for the pain that it brought me. Jerry Rig Everything has done his durability test on the Steam Deck, and honestly, performed pretty good, especially considering that the vast majority of this device, like 90 to 95% of the outside of this device, is plastic. Of course, the first thing everyone looks for is the screen durability, like the scratchability, because that's the least like ear-killing noise in the entire video, and the Steam Deck screen held up pretty well. The etched anti-glare glass caused some concern, obviously, because that'll show scratches easier than the smooth, like glossy, I guess, finish that's on the glass, but either way, it took a lot to scratch the screen on this device, which I would assume comes down to the fact that the screen is glass on either version you get. The cool thing about the buttons on the Steam Deck that I actually didn't know, I just kind of assumed they would be like printed onto the buttons, is that the mold goes all the way through. So like the A, B, X, and Y, the white plastic is going all the way through the buttons. So you're never gonna rub off the letters from the buttons with your thumb, which is nice to see. Unfortunately though, the start and select buttons along with the Steam button and the 3 dots menu button, those are all just like printed on decals, and those might eventually come off just with your fingers. I don't know, I'm not hitting those buttons all that much, not nearly as much as the A, B, X, Y, so I'm not too worried about it. And then the triggers and the bumpers have the L1 and R1 and R2 and L2 like lettering etched into actual triggers and buttons, so I don't think that's gonna really cause that much of an issue. But what did also impress me is how hard it was for him to kind of hack into those buttons. Like he was really going at it with a razor blade, and they were not chipping on the first try. It took a few like gouges from him to actually break off any pieces or get any deep scratches into the buttons. So as far as durability goes, that seems pretty good to me. Now I feel like I can provide some insight on the durability here because my Steam Deck broke. I've been trying to figure out how exactly it could have broke like the L1 button did. I know I saw someone else comment that the like little piece that stands on top of the board that has the button that's actually depressed when you hit the bumper can come off if you put too much force on it. But the only thing I can really think of as for how that button could have broke is when I put my Steam Deck in the case and then I put it in my backpack. Every day when I leave the studio, I kind of like throw my backpack into my trunk. I like drop it, and nothing's ever really broken ever. And I've been doing it for a couple years now. But yeah, this time it might have hit on the corner of the Steam Deck's case. That's honestly the only time where I've ever been really rough with it. Like I'm that kind of person who likes their things to look new and stay looking new as long as possible. Like I put a screen protector on my Steam Deck the moment I possibly could just to protect that glass on the screen. And I treat my stuff with respect, right? Like I build Lego sets all the time. I got to make sure that they don't fall apart. So I don't manhandle or purposely be rough with anything. I'm not totally willing to chalk it up to the Steam Deck not being durable, because when you hold it, the plastic feels durable. Like if you flex the screen and everything, it doesn't flex all that much. And I had to flex it a couple times because that Steam Deck that I had before had a little bit of screen bleed. And I saw someone say, yeah, just flex it a little bit and that'll even out the screen bleed. And lo and behold, that actually fixed it for me. With the 10 out of 10 being a Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP, I feel like with older Nintendo consoles, you really had to try to break those things if you wanted to break them. Like they weren't going to break from just a couple drops. And I feel like at the very least, my Steam Deck is at that level because it took that long of me dropping my bag kind of hard in my car's trunk for it to actually stop working, if that's what actually caused the button to break. But either way, I'll talk about it more in a future video, but the RMA process was honestly kind of impressive. So the last news story I wanted to talk about today is a device that a lot of people are talking about as a true competitor to the Steam Deck. It's the Aya Neo 2. Now I've actually messed around with an Aya device before. We had the Aya Neo Next in the office. They actually sent it for Xbox Ready, my buddy Ray's channel, to take a look at, and I'm really into PC handheld, so when they were done working with it, I was like, I want to try that thing out. And I had a ton of fun with it. It was a cool Windows device, and they have this Aya software that comes built in, and just like when you're on the desktop side of SteamOS, when you have it open, it turns the right stick into your mouse, which makes navigation on Windows 11 honestly pretty decent. I did have some issues holding it, like the edges were pretty sharp and it felt a little bit heavy in my hands because, you know, it uses a full-sized NVMe drive in there. Like they're not worried about ergonomics at all, but I was pretty impressed with the performance. But they're not content with that device, I guess, because they just announced two new ones, the Aya Neo 2 and the Aya Slide. The Neo 2 though is the one that people are really considering as a competitor to the Steam Deck, and that's because of the parts inside. So this one's using a Ryzen 7 6800 APU. It has 8 cores and runs on the faster Zen 3 Plus architecture. It also has an integrated Radeon 680IM iGPU, which has 12 compute units. And just for comparison, the Steam Deck has a quad-core AMD APU that runs on the older Zen 2 architecture and an iGPU with RDNA 2 graphics and 8 CUs. Now, just from a raw number standpoint, the Aya Neo 2 technically outperforms the Steam Deck by a factor of 2. It's 2 times more powerful in terms of teraflops, but of course, course, it's running Windows 11, and it doesn't really seem like they're doing all that much work other than adding in the Aya software to really make Windows 11 be suited to a handheld. And on top of all of this, just looking at the price point of the Aya Neo Next, it's not really a fair fight on either end of the fence because the Steam Deck is selling for around $400 for the 64GB model, but you have to consider the fact that Valve is selling this thing at a loss. Like, that basically makes it a very expensive device that's being sold at a much cheaper price than it probably should be. But Valve's being smart there, right? Like, they can take the loss on the hardware because everyone's buying their games on Steam, and Valve takes a 30% cut of every game sale on Steam. So if they take a loss on that hardware, you're enjoying it, you're buying all your games on Steam because you're not wanting to put in all that work to get the Heroic Games launcher working, then they make that money back every time you buy a game. And it makes sense to me from that perspective. Aya, on the other hand, does not have that luxury, right? Like, when you buy these devices for over $1,000, you're going to download Steam and give Valve 30% of a cut on every game you buy. You're going to download the Epic Games Store and get a bunch of free games on there. Aya is not seeing a penny from any of those purchases, and I know they have a pretty dedicated fan base out there. Like, there are already people making cases for the Aya Neo Next, and I've seen the subreddit get pretty active and people really enjoy that thing. What really makes me curious about this device though is how it would run SteamOS. Valve basically said when they announced SteamOS 3 and the Steam Deck that they were going to open up SteamOS and allow other manufacturers to use it. Like, they were basically making a reference point with the Steam Deck for these other manufacturers to use when they're making their own devices, because from Valve's perspective, the more devices out there that are running SteamOS, the better. And I doubt they'd honestly charge a lot of these other companies like Aya a fee to even use SteamOS, right? Like, they'd probably say, hey, install SteamOS on your device. You don't have to license it from us at all. Just make sure it works well on your device, because to them, that's taking a lot of the market share from Microsoft away, which is good because that stops Microsoft from being the monopoly in gaming. I know there are already other devices announced. I think One X Player has one coming that will ship with SteamOS, which is awesome. And if you want me to take a look at those and compare them to the Steam Deck, make sure you let me know down in the comments and tell your friends about the channel. And if you really want to help me out, again, check out those affiliate links in the description.